We live in an unbelievable time where we really know what works and what doesn't work from a sales perspective. And what we did is we analyzed 23,900 conversations and compared the conversations of top performers to everyone else. And all of the reps in this study use a consultative sales approach, so we just wanted to see what the top reps were doing differently in a question-based consultative approach to the average and bottom performers. This is completely new insight. So in this video, I'm going to show you 6 counterintuitive sales tips from our new sales statistics. Check it out. Number 1, create more back and forth. What we determined from the data is that top performers are making 54% more conversation switches on calls and 78% more conversation switches in presentations. So on average, top performers have significantly more back and forth across all calls. This means avoiding those long monologues on both sides of the conversation. That's just so much more back and forth, engaging and having this back and forth. Just like if you were to run into a friend from high school or college and you're catching up and you're doing this back and forth. Oh, do you remember this? Oh yeah, I remember. That's the type of conversation that top performers are having with their prospects. Now, they may not be high energy or super excited like you would be to see an old friend from high school, but there's so much more back and forth. I talk, you talk. I talk, you talk. So what we take away from this is that what we want to be doing in every selling situation is not these long periods of monologue on either side, but instead just being constantly going back and forth, quick questions, and then at the same time when we're listening, very actively listening and recognize, oh yeah, I hear what you're saying. Oh, that makes sense. Cool, right? Having this back and forth is going to significantly increase the likelihood that you ultimately close that deal. Number 2, make your sales meetings longer. What we learned from the data is that top performers' discovery calls are 76% longer than average performers, and their presentation meetings are 55% longer. That is a huge difference. That means that basically top performers are scheduling almost twice as long of a meeting as your average rep. The key takeaway here is that top performers are able to engage prospects in far longer conversations than everyone else. And at the same time, they're likely expecting more time from their prospects. And this makes sense, right? Bottom performers are typically begging their prospects for just 7 minutes of their time or just 5 minutes and then hoping that it goes longer. Yet what we see is that top performers are essentially expecting more time with their prospects. Yes, they're able to engage their prospects better, but at the same time, they're simply asking for more time up front and thus setting the expectations for longer conversations. And this is ultimately having a huge impact on the likelihood of closing a deal. So moving forward, determine how long a meeting really should take, and that is the amount of time that we should be expecting. Number 3, get them talking a lot. What we learned from this data is that top performers don't necessarily talk less than average and bottom performing reps using a consultative approach, but what they're doing is they're getting prospects far more engaged in the conversation. There's so much more back and forth. So when it actually comes to the talk to listen ratio, again, amongst only people that are using a question-based consultative approach, there's actually not a huge difference between top performers and everyone else. So just for example, basically the average discovery call or presentation meeting is about 50-50 back and forth on both sides. It's essentially negligible differences. But what we also know is that top performers are having so much back and forth in their conversations, in that engagement. So ultimately, on the surface, this may seem like, hey, this isn't compelling. But when you combine the fact that there's more back and forth, and at the same time, it's about a 50-50 ratio of who's talking and who's not, what we see is that top performers are engaging in dynamic back and forths with their prospects. And on the other hand, the rest of the team is maybe still doing a 50-50 talk to listen ratio, but it's these longer periods of silence and talking. It's a pace where we have fewer conversation switches throughout, and thus less engaged and less likely to close a sale. So the takeaway here is to consistently engage the prospect in a conversation. When you say something, make sure they're understanding exactly what you're saying with a little feedback loop. Like, you know what, does that make sense? Or can you see what I'm saying there? Get them to nod their head or say, yeah, that makes sense. Or if you have a quick question, ask a quick question. Why is that? Help me understand why you think that is. Having those back and forths is the key to success in selling right now. Number 4, slow things down. What we have learned is that top performers simply speak more slowly. And just as powerfully, top performers' prospects also speak more slowly. So just to give you a sense here, top performers speak at an average of about 171 words per minute, while the rest of the team is speaking at around 182 words per minute. Now, that's only about a 6.5% difference, but you would hear that difference in the pace. But what's even more interesting is that the pace at which their prospects speak is really significantly different. So top performers prospects are speaking at around 174 words per minute, while average and bottom performing prospects are speaking at around 198 words per minute. Now that's a 14% difference. And so what we take from this is that the data is suggesting that prospects who are talking to lower performing reps may realistically feel more impatient or just in a rush to get through the conversation. Whereas top performing reps, on the other hand, are much more likely to put prospects at ease, to make them feel comfortable, and to slow down the conversation. And this makes sense logically in real life. If you're talking to a therapist about something that you really care about, you're going to naturally slow down your pace. And so top performers are much more able to get their prospects at ease, slow down, and be fully present and engaged in the conversation. So we want to be really allowing our prospects the space to slow down the conversation and recognize our tonality. Are we just kind of going through a checklist, or are we really closely listening to what they're saying and then basing what we're asking based on what they actually just said? Number 5, ask more questions, get more questions. Now, this was really mind-blowing that top performers are both asking and receiving far more questions. So in discovery conversations, top performers were basically asking about 39 to 40% more questions in discovery. And at the same time, in presentation meetings, top performers are asking about 30% more questions during their actual presentations. That's pretty amazing. But just as interesting is that we also see the number of questions that top performers receive is a huge difference. So top performers are receiving 40% more questions during discovery. And at the same time, during presentations, top performers are receiving 43% more questions during that presentation. This is an enormous difference. So let's kind of break down these two ideas. First is how many questions we're asking. The reality is we need to be asking more questions in most cases. Now, again, this is not about peppering people with probing questions, but instead really actively listening. And when a prospect says something that you're not entirely sure you fully grasp, it's, oh, well, help me understand that. Or why do you say that? Or what prompts you to say that, right? It's these little spontaneous questions that make a huge difference. Or during presentation, after you share a piece of information, using a feedback loop to basically re-engage the prospect. So you share an important piece of information and then you respond with, so do you see exactly what I'm saying there? Right? Get them to fully come back to you. At the same time, by having these conversations that are fully engaged, you're much more likely to be receiving way more questions. So oftentimes as salespeople, we almost get nervous when we're getting peppered with questions, but that's actually a good sign. So when your prospects are asking you questions appropriately and with respect, now you know that they're much more engaged with what's going on. That is an important sign that you are getting closer to that sale. Number 6, no more features. The data was unequivalent. Top performers discuss product features far less. So that means in discovery calls, product features came up about half as often in high performing salespeople's conversations than in average and bottom performing people's conversations. At the same time, during the presentation, product features came up 63% less with top performers' conversations than with everyone else. This is such an important distinction because we absolutely need to move away from focusing on the features of our product or service. The reality is your prospect doesn't care. What they care about is that you have a solution to their problems. Top performers absolutely focus on the features of what they're selling so much less than everyone else. So moving forward, how can you be focused on the solutions to what you're doing as opposed to the specific features of your product or service? So there are 6 counterintuitive tips from our new sales statistics. And if you enjoyed this video, then I have an amazing free training on the step-by-step formula to closing more deals. Just click right here to get registered instantly. Seriously, just click right here. This is an in-depth training that will help you close more deals at higher prices, all while generating more meetings. Also, if you got some value, please like this video below on YouTube and be sure to subscribe by clicking my face, which should be right about here, to get access to a new video just like this one each week.